First of all, I'd like to thank all the speakers who've come before me today. MashaAllah, I don't know how I'm going to fulfill the task that has been set to me. I've been asked to speak about appreciation and value, and I thought I'd split it into two and maybe use it in the form of a story, taking the example from my esteemed colleagues earlier on. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, we must always thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because ultimately everything that we have is given to us by Him, and we are the custodians of it. A lot of people think that their success is as a result of what they may have earned by their own hands. In actual fact, all success is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me give you an example. I own a business, and I have many people who work under me. A lot of people think that I am very successful and I earn much as a consequence of my business. But they're mistaken. Because in actual fact, it is the rizq of those who work for me that comes through me. So what I have in effect is theirs, and I'm just passing it on. So coming back to values, today it is very popular to state one's values, to think them through, write them out. In fact, you see mission statements, you see posted on company websites, schools, institutions do them all. Values fire the imagination, drives action and direction. So you set your goal and you think about it, and that then makes you do what you want to do. In fact, in a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful or Effective People, Stephen Covey says the ability to subordinate an impulse to a value is the essence of a proactive person. Reactive persons are driven by feelings, by circumstances, by conditions, by the environment. Proactive people are driven by values, carefully thought about, selected, and internalized values. What does that really mean? That means that everything is but by intention. One of the first hadith that we read in my mouth now is where if someone intends to do something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards them accordingly. So if you were to intend to come here to seek knowledge, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, inshallah, bless you accordingly. But if you came here to meet your brother Asif, then you will attain that. But the advantage of coming to a meeting like this is that you will also be counted among those that Allah mentions. Now, we have heard many, many things, and we find that the best way of me articulating how to appreciate values, and maybe conclude later, is through this little story, which is a factual story, and it's about Steve Jobs. I think you probably know him as the founder of Apple or Microsoft. Not Microsoft, Apple produces iPads, all of you have them, and his company, Apple Computers. There's a young gentleman, academically excellent, who came to him, and he applied for a position and a managerial post. He passed the first interview, and it was up to Steve Jobs to give him the job or otherwise. So he decided that he was going to take his final interview. He looked at his CV, and on the CV this guy was excellent all round, brilliant academically, from secondary school, postgraduate, through to research. He was always top of the class. When he came for the interview, he asked the gentleman, he said to him, did you obtain any scholarship? As you know, in the States and places like that, like now, £9,000 is what most of the universities are asking for, and your parents or yourself have to fork out for them, unless you are able to get a student loan. But going back to this gentleman, he says, did you obtain any scholarship in school or otherwise? And he says, no, I didn't say that. And he says, did your father pay for your school fees? And he says, no, not my father. My father actually passed away when I was 1 year old. He says, it was my mother who paid for my school fees. So he asked him, what does your mother do? And the youth said to him, my mother is a cloth cleaner. She washes clothes for people. So the director said to him, can you show me your hands? So he looked at his hands, and they're a bit like mine. I'm a pencil pusher myself, you know, very soft hands. And Steve Jobs turned to the young chap and he said to him, did you ever help your mother wash the clothes before? And the youth turned around and said, no, never. My mother always wanted me to study. In fact, she said to me, read more, and, you know, moreover, my mother's much more competent and proficient and faster than me in washing the clothes. So he said to the chap, I have a request for you. When you go back home today, I want you to clean your mother's hands. And then come and see me tomorrow morning. So the youth, he thought to himself, well, you know, Steve Jobs told me this, I'm going to get the job, I'm really confident. What am I going to do? So he went home very happily. The first thing he goes, he sees his mum and says, Mum, can I have a look at your hands? So he puts his hands on mother's hands, and his mother finds it rather strange. And he says, no, let me persist with it. And all of a sudden, for the first time, the youth starts feeling the wrinkleness in his mother's hands, and there's a tear drops from his eyes. He feels the bruises on her hands, and when he washes them, in fact, some of those bruises incite pain. So strong that it makes his mother shiver. Now this is the first time that the young chap realized and experienced that these were the pair of hands that washed clothes every day to earning the school fees. The bruises in his mum's hands was the price that the mother paid for his graduation, for his academic excellence, and probably for his future. He never thought about it before. And furthermore, she had done this willingly and without complaint, just because she loved him. After finishing washing his mother's hands, the youth quietly washed the rest of the clothes. And that day, probably after a very, very long time, mother and son talked for a very long time. The next morning, the youth went to Steve Jobs' office, and he noticed the tears in the youth's eyes. He said, can you tell me what you have done and learned yesterday in your home? And the youth answered and he says, I cleaned my mother's hands and also finished cleaning all the remaining clothes. He says to him, tell me your feelings. And the youth summarized them in 3 statements. He says, I now know what appreciation is. Without my mother, there would be no success for me today. I know how to work together with my mother. Then only can I realize how difficult and tough things get done. And also, how difficult and tough it is to get things done. He says, I know the importance and value of family relationships. Steve Jobs turned around to that guy and he said to him, this is what I'm looking for. I want to recruit a person that can appreciate the help of others. A person that knows the suffering of others to get things done. And a person that will not put money as its only goal in life. That is what I'm looking for in my manager. The person is a personal friend of mine who now runs Apple in Saudi Arabia. What I really want you to think about here is, if we look at the values which we now talked about and big industry is looking for in order to make people successful, they're very simply the values that we already possess. They're the values of respect, the values of appreciation, the values of being thankful and grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And most importantly, we look at how Islam was spread in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in the Far East. It was through the conduct of those who followed the Islamic faith. It was the merchants. There is a story of Abu Darda. He is, as most of you know, a very famous scholar. He's one of he was a trader as well as a scholar. And he traded in garments. One day he went to pray and he came back and he noticed that one of the garments that had been around for a period of time had been sold, and his assistant told him that he'd sold this garment to this lady, and he asked the person, "Did you let them know about the defect in that garment?" And the person said, "No, but they saw the garment." Abu Darda followed the ladies or the people of the group all the way through to Bukhara to return their money or otherwise give them their compensation. It is our conduct, us as individuals, and how we preach or we practice what we preach that counts. So coming back to values, it is those sets of values which will make you successful. And do not forget for 1 second that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that your rizq has been written and the ink has dried. And if you think that by following a gangster, I can't remember his name, but whoever was here and selling those dope or whatever it was they were selling, and you're going to make a lot of money, you have fulfilled your rizq. Think again, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, your rizq is written and the ink has dried. It is up to you. Take it halal, take it haram. It is yours. But remember the concept of barakah. Jazakumullah khair.